We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world. Like that. That's my winning song for winners. See that? Stanley Cup champions. Let's go. Do you guys know I was an Avs fan? Yeah. Hard to tell, I know, right? Really quick, I want to show you guys something. I know you guys are waiting for me to react to my predictions from before the playoffs and before the season. But really quick, I want to show you something that I was working on this entire postseason. So right there is the pom-pom. Right there is the pom-pom from the first playoff win of the season. It was like 7-2 against Nashville. And then you go down here, and those are all 4 wins from that series. Right there, and those 4 right there. Those are the ones from St. Louis. Those are from Edmonton. Then we come down here, and then right there is the one from the Stanley Cup winning game against Tampa Bay in Game 6. And I have this little puck display here for each round. Wanted to let you guys in on that little project I was doing. So every time they won, I take a pom-pom, because that's what they do at Avs games. I'd take a piece of tape, I'd write the score, and I'd nail it up there. So yeah, now that's enough gloating for me. I'm actually going to react to my predictions and humble myself a little bit. So let's get on with this. First, we're going to get into my preseason predictions. I did these on stream back the day before I think the season started. I wish I'd thought this through better, because I would have grabbed the VOD. So that way I could get a little bit more of my reasoning, but I did not do that. But I did do a Photoshop document of it, so we do have that to look at. So how this is going to work is I'm going to go through and I'm going to assign a point. So I get 1 point if I was 1 space off, and I get 3 points if I was exactly on, and then obviously I got no points if I was neither of those things. We're going to go from left to right here, and we're just going to look. And we're just going to do the points really quick. So obviously no points for Vegas. Suck on that. I get 3 points for Edmonton, because I got that one right on. No points for Vancouver. No points for Calgary. No points for LA. No points for Seattle. 1 point for San Jose, because they actually finished 6th, and I predicted them to go 7th. And then I get 1 point for Anaheim, because they finished 7th, and I predicted them to go 8th. So after the Pacific, I'm at 5 points so far. So then we'll go to the Central, and I get 3 points for Colorado, no points for Winnipeg, 3 points for St. Louis, 3 points for Dallas, 3 points for Nashville, no points for Chicago, no points for Minnesota, and 3 points for Arizona. So I did pretty well there. So now I'm at 20 points so far through the Western Conference. And then starting in the East, we got the Metro. I get no points for New York. I get 1 point for Carolina, no points for Philadelphia, 3 points for Washington, no points for Pittsburgh, no points for New York, 1 point for Columbus, because I predicted them to go 7th and they came in 6th, and then 1 point for New Jersey, because they came in last and I predicted them to go 7th. So in that division, I got 6 points in the Metro, so now I'm at 26 points so far. I'll figure this out in post, because I might be wrong, but we'll just make sure. In the Atlantic, I get 3 for Florida, 1 for Tampa Bay, because I predicted them to come in 2nd and they came in 3rd. 1 for Boston, because I predicted them to come in 3rd. They came in 4th. None for Montreal. None for Toronto. 3 for Detroit, because I picked that one exactly right. And then 3 for Ottawa, because I got that one exactly right. And none for Buffalo. So that brings my final total to 37 points. Isn't awful. It's not very good, especially considering some of the ones I missed on. I missed badly on, very badly. So let's go through really quick and just kind of analyze these. Vegas obviously felt like a slam dunk for most people coming into this season. We all know what happened. They traded for Jack Eichel, and then all of a sudden, they sucked, but also half their team died. It's a little bit of this gray area where it's you're like, dang, that sucks, but also you had plenty of opportunity to make the playoffs and you didn't. So, and you also put yourself way over the cap. So when players got hurt, they couldn't come back because you didn't have the money for them to. Edmonton obviously had a pretty good regular season. Their offense kind of carried them through. Mike Smith, another really solid regular season. Obviously, we know how that went in the playoffs, but still, Vancouver I thought was going to be a lot better than they were. They weren't awful. They came close at the end. The guys like Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser just didn't do enough for them. JT Miller was their big guy. They just didn't get quite enough from the guys that you want them to get production out of. Calgary, I undersold going into the season because I didn't, foresee Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk having the seasons that they did. They went nuts. That first line was incredible. And obviously Jacob Markstrom had a Vezina nominee caliber season, which really helped them out. Los Angeles, I pegged pretty close to right. They did get a little bit lucky with the weaker division. But I especially thought Cal Peterson was going to be a lot better, but Jonathan Quick kind of bridged that gap. So I don't know. It was a complicated season for them. But I wasn't too far off on them. Obviously, I overrated Seattle quite a bit. Seattle's big problem was Grubauer this year, and I think he'll be better in years to come. He's still a good goalie. Like, he's been a pretty good goalie his entire career. I think it was just an adjustment. I think his confidence was an all-time low after the Vegas series, and I think that just kind of spiraled out for him. I'll get into this when I do my preseason predictions for this upcoming year, but they're going to be pretty good coming in the next season. San Jose, I got pretty close on. They're just not a very good team. They didn't have the goaltending. They didn't have any sort of high-end offense. Their defense is old and just not very good. So that I saw that coming. Anaheim actually was looking like they were going to make the playoffs for a while, thanks to my boy Troy Terry. I met him once, by the way. Insert picture here. Man went off this year, made the All-Star game. They had a really good season, and they're looking to be better, but obviously they didn't make the playoffs, and now, Getzlaf is retiring. They're in this little weird area, but the Pacific Division overall is pretty weak. That wasn't my strongest division, to say the least. I think that was actually the division I did worst in. The only thing that really saved me was at getting Edmonton right on, because everything else kind of screwed up. So that wasn't very good. The Central I did very, very well in. Outside of Winnipeg and Minnesota, I banged this division. Obviously, Colorado first, was a little bit of a homer take, but not really. This was something that a lot of people were picking. So I wasn't exactly out there in picking Colorado. They had good forward depth coming into the season, good defensive depth. I thought Kemper was going to be a really good goalie, and he was in the regular season, and he was pretty underrated in the playoffs. But again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Winnipeg, kind of just a disaster. Their locker room is just awful. Paul Maurice resigned mid-season. They just don't have the defense, and Connor Hellebuck just was running out of steam. St. Louis, I pegged them on pretty well. They had a very different year than they do usually. They're usually a very defensive-oriented team. They like to slow things down, but this year it was all about offense. Their defense was really not good. Luckily for them, they had Ville Husso to come jump in to take Jordan Binnington's place when he kind of really hit rock bottom. That was really the only thing that really bailed out their defense, because their defense was just not very good. But their offense was really good. As everybody knows, they had 9 goal scorers. Dallas, there was a point where I didn't think they were going to get to this point, especially in the last game of the season where Nashville was up 4-0 against the Coyotes. And I didn't expect the season out of Jake Ottinger. But I figured they would play their system and is what it would get them there, and it kind of was, except they just didn't play it very well. But luckily for them, Jake Ottinger kind of just willed them into being good. And then they obviously got Scott Wedgwood having some games after they traded for him at the deadline. They had a weird season, but obviously made the playoffs like I predicted. Nashville, I kind of thought it was going to be just UC Saros kind of willing this team to victory, pushing them. No one else really helping, maybe a little bit out of Roman Josi. But then we had Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg going absolutely nuts, along with Roman Josi having what would have absolutely won him the Norris in any other year where Cale Makar, if Cale Makar didn't do what he did. So that was something I didn't see coming. But obviously it ended them in the same spot. And then Chicago, I thought they were going to be okay. They added Tyler Johnson and Marc-Andre Fleury. No, I think I remember at the beginning of the season saying it was going to be like back and forth for Nashville and Chicago. And I think I like wanting to pick Chicago at one point. I'm so glad I didn't, because they sucked and they're going to suck next year. To the following team that I really underestimated, Minnesota. My reasoning for having Minnesota this low was that I thought last year was very fluky for them. They had a lot of guys with career years. Cam Talbot went nuts. Fortunately for them, they got to run it all back again this year because everybody had career years, like Marcus Foligno, obviously Kirill Kaprizov, which isn't really like as big of like a fluky deal. Joel Eriksson Ek, I'm pretty sure, had a really nuts season. Jordan Greenway, I think, also had some pretty nuts production. And then obviously Arizona, like, come on, this was easy. They were coming into the season tanking. They traded all their good players. If any team wanted to get rid of a player for a cap dump, they would just be like, all right, fine, just give us a first or a second. And they'd be like, teams would just be like, all right. So they just accumulated picks, and they did a really good job at sucking. So good for you, Arizona. I'm proud of you. Now let's go to the Metro. So the Metro, the Islanders. The Islanders did not change very much from the first 2 years the years they had back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals appearances. I thought they were the best in this division because they'd kind of been there. I thought they would like carry this momentum and be like, all right, this year's the year we're finally going to do it. And I feel like they would do that in the regular season. That didn't happen. They had Ilya Sorokin kind of carry them, and that's kind of it. Their structure just didn't do what it's supposed to do. They just didn't get production. Josh Bailey just decided he wasn't going to score goals ever. It was just a pretty mediocre season for the Islanders. And then Carolina. So I had really high hopes for Carolina going into this season. I obviously didn't have them far off from where I actually predicted them, from where they actually finished. But yeah, I just thought the Islanders were just going to be better. That's pretty much simple. I just didn't think, I thought the Freddie Anderson thing wasn't going to work out nearly as well as it did. And I thought, there were just a little bit of holes in Carolina's lineup, but I was really close on them. So I could have had Carolina at 1 and I would have been bang on. Philadelphia, I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking Carter Hart was going to be better. They had some good talent. Cam Atkinson, I thought he had a pretty good year, just not good enough for that team. That team was a train wreck this year. Washington, I got them bang on. I pretty much figured they'd do what they did. I kind of thought their goaltending wasn't going to be as good. Was going to be better than it was. I thought Samsonov was going to be a lot better, but obviously he wasn't. I thought they were going to be better at goaltending and worse at offense, but it kind of swapped. So that's where they ended up there, and I could have told you before the season that they were going to lose in the first round, and I would have been right. We got Pittsburgh. I had them lower because I didn't trust Tristan Jarry, but obviously he had a really solid season this year. That was really the big thing, is I didn't trust Jarry, and obviously Jarry had a really good year. So, I mean, it's like one spot between the two, but, whatever. And then the Rangers, like, obviously, the big thing. I didn't expect Igor Shesterkin to literally go absolutely nuts and destroy the league and, like, take talks away from Andrei Vasilevsky for being the best goaltender in the world. I still think Vasilevsky is better, by the way, but still, like, this was one of the best goaltending seasons we've seen in a long time. And obviously I didn't see that coming. That's the big thing. I mean, otherwise they just weren't a very good team other than Shesterkin in the regular season. And then Columbus, I didn't think they'd be very good. And they weren't. They were very mediocre. I just didn't think the scoring was going to be there. And it wasn't. Like, they just weren't a very good team this year. Very mediocre. Obviously big things coming up for Columbus with Johnny Gaudreau. And then re-signing Laine, but we'll see. New Jersey, didn't quite get them right, but I wasn't too far off. Jack Hughes, what a season for Jack Hughes. He was so good analytically and had a really pretty good season as far as raw production goes. It's just the rest of the team behind him just isn't very good. Dougie Hamilton had his moments when he wasn't injured. Mackenzie Blackwood just sucked. So Atlantic, I got most of these right. Florida, they had like such a good offense coming into the season, and they had such a good offense in the season. So like, obviously that pick worked out. And then Bob had a pretty solid season, and it didn't tank them. So, I picked them to be first, and they pretty much did what I thought they were going to do. They were really good. And then they got Drew and Sherrod, which, you know, one of those guys was a smart pickup, and the other one was Ben Sherrod. So, yeah, Tampa Bay, I clearly rated Tampa Bay pretty... There was a fly. Pretty highly coming into the season. You know, they're coming off of a cup. Their team did lose one of its best lines, but, you know, you have Andrei Vasilevsky and you still have Stamkos, Kucherov, and Hedman. Like, yeah. Boston, I thought was going to be a little bit better than they ended up being. I trusted Linus Ullmark a little bit better. Their offense wasn't bad. Like, Pasternak and Marchand still had really good seasons. They just didn't do quite as well as I thought. And then Taylor Hall didn't have a super good season, especially for what you're hoping for from him. Montreal came off a Cup Finals appearance before you make fun of me for this. This isn't a terrible pick. I bet you a lot of other people did this. I didn't see Shea Weber and Carey Price being out for as long as they were. And obviously Shea Weber's probably done for his career. But yeah, Carey Price came back in like the last week or so of the season. I did not see that coming. That was my big thing with them being there, was that their team was the same and they had Carey Price, and then they were going to have a full season of Cole Caulfield. So, you know, I thought they were going to be better, but then Cole Caulfield had a really poor first half of the season, and Carey Price didn't play until like April. So they sucked. Toronto, I did not think Jack Campbell, he didn't really have a very good regular season, to say the least, but it wasn't that bad. I thought he was going to have a really not good regular season, but I thought their offense was going to be good enough to carry them to a playoff spot. And it kind of was, but Campbell was good enough at points to kind of just make it so like they just kept going higher. So that was my reasoning for that one. Detroit, obviously just not a very good team. Not much to be said there. Ottawa and Buffalo, all those three, like, I feel like that's chalk right there. No one expected those teams to be good. Detroit had a nice start to the season thanks to Tyler Bertuzzi going absolutely nuts, and then he just didn't do very much afterward. So yeah, those are my preseason regular season standings predictions. Now I'm just gonna really quick just do a little side by side of my preseason playoff predictions and my regular season playoff predictions. Okay, so here, not a lot of things went right. The only things I really predicted correctly were Colorado making it to the Cup final, Carolina making it to the second round, and then Florida and Tampa Bay in round 2. That's pretty much all I got right, because I picked Florida as the champs, and then I picked Florida over Tampa Bay, and then obviously the Pacific Division is just a mess. And then, you know, if you put the Islanders, if you change that I to an R, I got it really close to right. And I got, you know, a New York team against a Florida team, so, you know, there's a little bit of wiggle room there. I thought I picked Colorado to win. I think I might have gotten convinced out of it to not be so I wouldn't be like a homer. So yeah, there's those. And now let's compare those to my ones from right before the playoffs, which you guys have seen. I don't need to go into too much depth as to why I made some of these picks, but, you know, just really quick, I'll give like a quick overview. This was probably the best year I've ever had in this, and that's not saying much. I usually kind of suck at this, but I didn't do too terrible. I got actually pretty solid. I only messed up on 2 big ones, and that's, as you can see, Calgary and Carolina. Those are really the only big ones that I messed up on. Obviously, I got Colorado and Nashville bang on, except I gave Nashville the gentleman's sweep instead of what actually happened, which was straight sweep. And then I picked Minnesota in 7. And if you recall, I was going back and forth on whether or not I wanted Minnesota or St. Louis. I, in fact, picked St. Louis first. And that really gave me some pause during the series, because I was like, oh my God. All right, changed my pick from them, and it's just gonna bite me in the ass right now, isn't it? So that was scary. I picked Calgary in 6, which I think was a little bit kind of a solid choice. Obviously, it was actually in 7. but not too bad. Edmonton also in 6. Again, I feel like a lot of people were picking that in less games, and I got it almost right. But, you know, I got the teams right, and that's what matters. And then Florida and Washington, I thought Florida was going to do a little bit better. It took them a bit to get up to speed. Tampa Bay in 7. Like, I mean, was there an easier pick in this entire bracket than Tampa in 7 over Toronto? Come on. Like easy. That's easy. Come on now. And then Carolina in 7 over Boston. Bang that one too. And then New York over Pittsburgh in 6 is what I picked, but it actually was in 7. So a lot of these games I was barely off. Like every single one that I got right, that I didn't get the games right, I was 1 off on, which isn't saying a lot because there's only so many options, but it's like something to be a little bit proud of. I only got the one pick wrong in the first round, and that was Minnesota and St. Louis. So obviously then in real life we got Colorado and St. Louis. I still picked Colorado over that in my first one, kind of for the same reasons why they won. St. Louis's defense just wasn't very good, and partially was helped by the fact that like no one really showed up for St. Louis on offense outside of David Perron. Moving on from that, second round, Calgary and Edmonton. A lot of people picked Calgary, and myself included. I really didn't think Edmonton was going to be able to make it because I didn't think Smith was going to be good enough. I didn't think their defense was going to be good enough. Wasn't sure how good Connor McDavid would be. Calgary, like I said, had some flaws. Like their depth wasn't very good. Their defense isn't very good. Their biggest strong point was Jacob Markstrom, and that their first line could kind of go punch for punch with McDavid. But McDavid just kind of went off in this series, so that wasn't anything that was important. So then moving over, I went back and forth on this one, and obviously, thank God, finally my gut was like right. My back and forth ended up in the right choice, Tampa Bay over Florida. I kind of saw it coming. Tampa Bay has that little bit of that big brother mentality over Florida, and they kicked their asses. Like, they just made easy work of Florida, and it didn't help that Florida just decided that they were just gonna their best players were just gonna not do anything that series. That didn't really didn't help them out. And then Carolina and New York, I really just did not have a lot of faith in New York coming into this, because I figured either Shesterkin would give out, which he kind of did, but then the rest of their team kind of figured out how to actually play good hockey. Andrew Kopp really helped out a lot. And Shesterkin found his game. You know, he wasn't nearly as good as he was in the regular season, but he was still really good come the postseason. So, and Carolina just couldn't finish a series when they had to, and they couldn't win a road game. They couldn't. And that's not how you win, like, in the playoffs. Conference finals, Colorado, I picked them over Calgary. I would have definitely picked them over Edmonton. Obviously, they ended up sweeping them. It was probably the Avs' closest series outside of Tampa Bay. And the big thing with Edmonton was, like, Connor McDavid wasn't bad, but he wasn't Connor McDavid. Like, he had that one goal in at the beginning of game 3. Their defense and Mike Smith just wasn't good enough. And for the first 3 games of that series, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, not good enough. No one on Edmonton was really good enough in the end. And then Tampa Bay, and what I thought was going to be Carolina, ended up being New York. I would have picked Tampa Bay if I had known it was New York, as low as I was on New York going into the playoffs. Tampa Bay's just the better team. They have the offenses are pretty similar, very top heavy. Not too much depth, but New York had some solid depth after they got Kopp. But that was kind of taken away by Tampa Bay's defense just being so much better than New York. And then Andrei Vasilevskiy and Igor Shesterkin dueled it out. They did, exactly what we thought they were going to do. They dueled, but just Vasilevskiy was just that much bit better. And then obviously I ended up having Colorado and Carolina in the Stanley Cup Finals, but as we all know, it was Colorado and Tampa Bay. I would have picked it to go 7. It obviously didn't, but I really thought Colorado was going to have a harder time with Andrei Vasilevskiy. And it wasn't that, they didn't have a hard time with him. He wasn't very good in the first 2 games. I think Colorado probably still wins that series unless Andrei Vasilevskiy goes legitimate God mode. I still think Colorado wins just because the speed against Tampa Bay is just so... we've seen Andrei Vasilevsky is a really good goaltender, but we saw it in the first few games against Toronto. That speed can kill his team, and it can kill him too. So that speed really kind of showed in the series that it was, the big separating factor between Colorado and Tampa Bay. Colorado, throughout the playoffs, they got depth scoring. Their defense, oh my God, their defense was so good. The big thing that separated Colorado from the other teams was just the mix of super high-end star power, firing at almost all cylinders. Mikko Rantanen wasn't great for the first 2 rounds. I think he was probably one of Colorado's most underrated players, just because he didn't have a great first round and he didn't have any goals on a goalie until Edmonton, but he was doing things well. But it was the star power and the depth that really propelled them through it, and their defense was so good. That is going to be one of the best decors in the league next year, I think. But yeah, obviously I picked Colorado to win, and they won. So yay me, I picked it right. I get the satisfaction of picking this right and getting to see my team win the cup. One of the happiest moments of my life. It's amazing. I went to the parade. I watched the game in a bar packed full of people, and I stayed out until 5 a.m. partying. It was great. That's how my predictions kind of aged. I didn't do awful. I feel like I did better than most people would. ? But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of them. Feel free to roast me, especially for those Montreal and Toronto picks. Feel free to roast me for those. Minnesota won too. But at the end of the day, my favorite team won the Stanley Cup. So there's that. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Can't wait for next season. See if the Colorado Avalanche will go back to back. Spent so much money on cup merch, so please subscribe so I can start making money on this channel. And also, I'm just going to plug real quick my other channel where I do Colorado Avalanche hype videos if you're into that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next video, sending you off with some all the small things.
It's over! They did it! They did it! The job is done! The Colorado Avalanche are Stanley Cup champions!